everybody, I'm back with another travel talk video. So in this particular video today, I am going to be sharing with you my shopping plans. In addition to that, I'm going to be talking about value-added tax and exchange rates. So there's a lot that goes into this, and let me tell you, I am not the ultimate authority whatsoever, but this is going to be my fourth trip to Europe, and I have learned quite a bit, especially since my first trip. I'm way more knowledgeable than I was on my first trip. So I'm going to share with you my knowledge, but let me ask you guys something. If you are much more knowledgeable about this and have good information, please leave a comment below, because I need to know myself, and I'm sure that other people need to know as well. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to start out with exchange rates first. So these amounts of money is what is a, I'm specifically speaking from somebody that lives in the United States. So I have to look at the value of the United States dollar as it is compared to the value of the euro, of money in the European Union. And so right now the dollar is worth less than the euro. And back in the fall of 2017, there was like a few days where the euro was actually worth less than the US dollar, and I could kick myself all over for not purchasing euros then. I didn't do it. But I have recently gotten my euros for my trip, and my particular exchange rate was, I paid $1.29, and then there was something, it just kept going on. But basically it was $1.29, $1.29 US for 1 euro. So every single euro I got, I paid $1.29, and I ended up losing about $400 US in the exchange rate. That particular number goes up and down every single day, so it is just a gamble. And you also need to be very careful where you purchase your currency. I do not suggest you ever get it at the airport. That is for an emergency only. I made the mistake of doing that on my first trip. They charge so much extra money for commission in addition to the exchange rate, so I lost a lot of money in my first trip. I highly suggest you just go with your bank. Now, not all banks do it, so you need to check with those first. And if your particular bank doesn't do it, try to have a good friend that their bank does do it, so that way it will save you money in the long run. Now, one thing I didn't want to do was use a debit card or a credit card and use an ATM in Europe, because my particular bank has outrageous I can't remember what everything's called, but basically, like, to use a different bank's ATM, you got to pay a fee, then there's exchange rate. I was probably going to pay an extra $4 or $5 for one ATM transaction, so that is something I will not do. I mean, that would be like, it's got to be an emergency for that. So I want to take euros with me before I go. So anyway, so there's an overview of the exchange rate and getting your currency and things of that nature. So before you even think about doing your shopping, you need to know how much money in the US dollars it's going to cost you for every euro dollar. I mean, I realize they don't call it dollars, but every euro that you spend. So know your exchange rate. That is extremely important. Then we have something called the value-added tax. Sometimes it's referred to as VAT or VAT. And this is an amount of money that I typically think of it like sales tax in the United States. That's what equates best in my mind. But basically, it's just a value-added tax on certain goods and services. And that amount of, that tax rate can be different depending on what the item is. So, for example, if it's like on food and water and certain services, that amount gets smaller. But if you're talking about luxury goods, clothing, shoes, different things like that, it's going to be a very high percentage. I'm talking about up into the 20% range. So I was primarily looking at the value added tax in in Spain and Italy. One of them is 22%, one of them is 21%, and then I think France is like 20%. One of the places I am going for a day excursion is Andorra. And my understanding is there's no value added tax there. So I'm like, if you want to do some shopping, Andorra is probably the place to go because no tax added onto the stuff. So anyway, be prepared for the value added tax. And one thing, I knew this, but I kind of forgot it when I was initially looking at stuff to start shopping or looking at items that I'm interested in purchasing. And somebody else told me, but then I remembered, I'm like, yes, you're right, I absolutely knew that. And so what they do in Europe is when you see a price of an item, that is the price you pay. The tax is already included into that price. And one of the reasons, or I guess the reason, is because whenever a person sees a price, when they go up to the register to pay, that is what they expect to pay. And so that's why the tax automatically gets added into the things. Whereas in the U.S., we walk up and if we buy something that say it's $5, in Nashville, Tennessee, I'm going to pay 9.25% of sales tax onto that item, as long as it's not food. Food's a little bit cheaper. But just, it's not, in the U.S. you pay tax on top of it, and the amount at the register is always more. Whereas in Europe, whatever you see the price tag, that's what you're going to be paying. So, what I ended up doing, and this is where I had to get help because my math skills are non-existent. So what I did, I looked at, and I'm going to insert some photos of things that I'm interested in buying. But what I did was I looked at a handbag here in the U.S., what it cost. And then I looked at, I jumped on, like, say, Gucci's site and looked and clicked on the Spanish version. Then you can switch it into English, so it'll let you can read, because I can't read Spanish, but it would let me look at the price in euros. So what I did, I took the price in euros, I subtracted the value added tax from that price that I saw in euro, and then that is the price that as a non-European Union citizen I would be paying. Yes, initially you do have to pay for the tax up front, but you can get your tax back later, and I'm going to get into that towards the end. So I went ahead and subtracted the money out and figured up. So let's say something is $1,000 and you're going to pay 21% or 22% or 20%, whatever it may be. So you're going to get your trusty iPhone if you have one, because that's what I have. I didn't bring it out with me. You're going to put $1,000 in, you're going to hit subtract, and then you're going to put 21% and hit the percent sign or the 22, whatever the tax is. So $1,000 minus, hit the minus button, put 21 and hit percent sign, and that amount that it gives you is going to be the tax on it. And then if you hit equal, that will be what you actually end up paying before tax. And so what I did was I got that number, and then I looked at the price in US. So now I've got my number over here with no tax, and I've got my US. Then I subtracted the amounts, and so based on a lot of the like Gucci, I was looking at Gucci, I was looking at Louis Vuitton. I attempted to look at Chanel, but I noticed I could not get their website to show me the prices in euro. I could switch to other countries, but it kept showing me prices in US. It could be operator error on my part, but that's what it kept showing. So what I plan on doing, I've got a notebook. I've got things listed in it that I am interested in buying. I've got the color, I've got what it is, I've got the US price, And then if I'm able to, I got the euro price, and I've done all the math, and so I know what I'm potentially going to be saving if I buy it in Europe. And so that is what I'm going to do. So when I walk into, say, Louis Vuitton, or I walk into Gucci or whatever, I am going to take my trusty little notebook in there with me and say, okay, that's what it is in US dollars. This is what it is in euros. And then I've got my math already figured out. And so I can say, yes, this is a good deal, or no, it's not a good deal. So that's kind of what I plan on doing. Is I've got some items that I am interested in purchasing, and I'm looking at, again, looking at the prices, and I'll know potentially what I'm going to end up paying in US dollars, because it doesn't matter what I pay in euro, it's coming out of my bank account in US dollars. So look at all that. Now, here is the most important piece of this puzzle of trying to save money. You have to purchase from a store that offers tax-free or VAT-free. Now, it may be written in the other language, so you need to ask the store. And most of these stores, especially like the higher-end luxury stores, they usually have an English-speaking person in there. A lot of them can speak English, which is good because I can't speak any other languages. I know a few words in Spanish, a few words in Italian, but not really enough to get by. And so what I will ask them, I said, can I get the value-added tax form, or is this tax-free? But you have to get this form from the store. And so what they will do is you're going to fill out a little bit of information. They're going to fill out a little bit of information on this form. And basically it tells the customs people in whatever country, whatever European Union country you leave from, I'll get that out in a minute, it tells them that you purchased this item at the store, you're going to have the receipt, and then you're going to have this form. And you take the form to your last country in Europe before you come back home, and you're going to take that form to customs. And they're going to stamp the form and say, yes, you can get the tax back. Now here's a big piece of it as well. You have to have those goods with you at the customs desk. So if you check into the airport first, before you go over, like check into your airline, and you drop your luggage off, and then you walk yourself over to the customs desk, they may ask to see everything you bought that is on those form and that receipt. If you have checked that luggage, they're not going to stamp your form. So if you can, I don't know if you have to check in first. I guess it depends on the airport, or you can go to customs first. But keep in mind, you want to be able to show the customs official that stuff. I have never once been asked to see anything. They've never once asked me, but just be aware that you have to have those goods when you go over there in case they ask to see them. So after you get your form stamped at customs, then you're going to walk it over to like another counter. It's somewhere in the airport. I believe it's called Global Blue. And they are going to give you your value-added tax back. And it could be done in cash, or it may go on your credit card. I think they told me it depends on how you pay for this, whatever's on the receipt, whether you paid in cash or whether it is paid on your credit card. I personally would like it to go on the credit card or debit card first, rather have it that, because if they hand me it in euros, then I've got these euros and I'm going to have to get those exchanged back into US dollars. So I would really rather it go back on the credit card, but I think it depends on how you pay for it, so watch out for that. And so if you end up with euros again, which you'll have to give, you could end up losing more money. Now let me tell you, they do charge an administrative fee for this. I do not know what that amount is. So even though you figured out I'm saving 21 or 22% in value-added tax, they're going to take a fee out of that. So I don't know what without knowing that particular number, I can't complete the actual total savings that I'm going to be saving. But I'll know approximately how much that is. And so most of the bigger stores do use the global blue, but some of them may not, and you might end up having to actually mail all the receipts and that form back to the store where you got it from, and you hope that they will pay you. So I would ask a few things when you go into the store. Number one, is it tax-free? Can you get that value-added tax form? Number two, do they use global blue? That's very important. If they answer yes to both of those, I'm like, you can shop. At least that's what I plan on doing. So that's the big thing right there. And I'm just looking to see if I've missed anything in my notes. Oh, one other thing. There is usually a threshold euro amount that you have to spend this particular amount of money before you can get that VAT tax form to take to the customs and the global blue. It can be different. I just looked it up online before filming, and Europe has a standard of about 175 euros, but some countries can go a little bit lower. But just keep in mind that you're probably going to need to spend 175 euros to be able to qualify for tax-free in one store. Now, I am going on a cruise ship, and the last cruise that I went on in Europe, luckily, they added everything together. So let's say I went and spent 10 euros at the gift shop on one day, and then 160 euro or 65 euros on another day. They're going to add all of that stuff together, and I'm going to be able to get my VAT tax based on that, because the cruise ship just looks at it as it's one, even though there's multiple gift shops and different days that you're spending, they look at it as one entity of shopping. So that's great that they do that. But you do have to pay the tax on the cruise ship. So just be aware of that. And so let's say you go into just a particular store and you buy 100 euros worth of items. You're probably not going to save any tax on that. So it's you need to ask them what that threshold is. Just keep in mind it's probably around 175, but it could be a little bit lower, but probably not much lower. And so if you're planning on walking in and buying a Louis Vuitton, you're probably not going to have any issue meeting that number, or Chanel or Gucci or Prada or I'm trying to think of other names, and they're escaping me right now. I'm like Ferragamo maybe. I'm not a huge Ferragamo fan, but anyway, so just look at it like that. Then here is another piece of the puzzle that this could mess you up in your savings. If you're a U.S. citizen and you're going single, you get $800 worth of goods that are up to that you can bring back into the U.S. without having to pay customs fees on. If you go over that $800 amount, they can assess customs fees. It is completely up to that particular customs agent, number one, of how much you're going to have to pay, or number two, they may not make you pay. What happens is, when you're on the airplane coming home from Europe, at some point in the trip, probably closer to when you're going to land, the flight attendants are going to pass out a customs form. And you're going to fill this out. And you're going to list like your passport number, your name. I think you put the places you visited. And then somewhere on that form, you're going to write down everything you bought and how much it is in US dollars. And you're going to add that up. If it's over $800, they may or may not assess you a fee. Just keep that in mind. You do need to be honest about it, because if you're caught, you're going to be in trouble. Now, I will tell you a story where I talked to a lady. She said on her very first European trip, she was 100% honest on that customs form. And she wrote down everything, and she went over $800. And she said they kept her in a room. Basically, she felt like she was being interrogated for over an hour about what she bought and how much she spent. And so it upset her so much that she said after that point, she said, I would never be honest on that form again. I'm going to keep the amount under 800 no matter what. I don't recommend, oh, let me back up. They did let her go when she didn't have to pay anything, but stressed her out so much and it upset her that she was like, I'm just not going to ever be honest with them. I don't recommend that at all, but I just wanted to tell you that story. Then a couple of other stories that I don't have personally, but I was watching Minx for All, Minnie, I think Minnie's her name, where she's talked about, she's gone on 2 different trips. One was to London, and I think she went to France and Italy. I can't remember. If you watch her channel, you may remember. And she says absolutely be honest on the form, and you just hope you get a good customs official that will help you out. So I remember this one story she told. She was coming home, got to the airport, or landed at the airport, and she said she had all of her nice, expensive luxury items in her carry-on, but they lost her checked bag. And so by the time she got to the customs official, she was in tears and was crying about the fact that they lost her luggage. And so she had a very nice customs official who says, they lost your luggage, and he's looking at the customs form, realizing it's more than $800 US. And he says, you know what, they lost your luggage, I'm not going to charge you for anything. Now, she did say that she didn't tell him that her the expensive stuff, over $800, was in her carry-on. She said, I didn't tell him that, but he waived the fee for her. Then she went on another trip, and she was talking about all her savings and how much she's paid, and she hands the guy her customs slip. And I want to say, I don't want to put words in her mouth because I've never met her. I just watch her so often. But I think they talked to her for about 45 minutes. And she said the guy kept saying, did you buy this stuff? And she's like, yes. And he says, you know I can assess you an amount. And she's like, yes, I understand. He said, I'm not going to charge you, but you understand that I can. And she just kept saying, and she said he kept repeating this over and over and over again. So what I think they're trying to do is trip you up to see if you're bringing, if you bought stuff for other people, if you're bringing goods back in to sell. Oh, that's another thing. These have to be for personal use. You don't need to bring back anything in for resale. That's a whole nother issue I'm not even going to talk about. That's not to say that you can't, you buy a Louis Vuitton handbag or a Gucci handbag and you use it for a year and then you decide to sell it on eBay. That's not what they're talking about. They're talking about going over there, buying a bunch of goods and turning around and resell it. That I'm not going to get into. I don't know anything about that, but that is different. So be honest on the customs form. I'm going to tell you, from different people I've talked to, most of them are not honest. Just letting you know what I have found out, because of the fact they don't want to get interrogated by customs officials. And I talked to somebody else. He said his girlfriend went to Europe. She bought a handbag and she just wore it back, and she didn't report it. She wasn't caught, but if you do get caught, you're going to be in trouble, and they definitely will assess you that money. It is just not worth it to not be honest. So that is huge. And if you want to share any tips about this, please put it down and let me know your experiences. I will tell you, based on other videos that I watch, because I like to watch, you know, what I bought in Italy, what I bought in France. I love those, or what I bought in Europe. I love those videos. But of everybody that I've ever watched that has talked about that, Minx for All, that channel, is the only one that's ever mentioned customs fees, and she has gotten out of them every time that I have seen her videos. She's gotten out of pain. So just be aware of that. You may get lucky and you may not, but be honest. But if you guys have any experience, please leave a comment below. I would love to know what your experience was getting the VAT form done, how much money you got back, did you have to pay customs fees or not? I would love to hear about that. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this video has helped, and I will chat with you guys later. Bye-bye, everybody.